I have been an earth healer and geomancer working with the unseen world since 2002. I do so because I believe I can make a better world by healing Mother Earth and in the process make a better me. Over that period of time, I've developed a cosmology, an outlook as how this world works and how it is structured, this hidden world, Mother Earth's hidden body, ultimate reality, whatever you want to call it. So my videos talk about this. But it begins with this first assumption. We live in a sea of consciousness, and that consciousness is God, Great Spirit, the One, Source. It is a pantheistic perspective that sees the unity and oneness in all. And some of my videos deal with this oneness and stuff, this sort of oneness or universal connection we have. Yet, we live in this material world. How is that possible? How does that come about? To do that back in 2006, 7 or so, I looked to Hinduism and various schools of thought. The Shiva Shakti, Puruji Prakriti, consciousness and energy. And the assumption is what? That Shiva sends Shakti, energy forward to create the material world, and that begins our existence, the world that we live in, and defines our being. At the core, we are all consciousness, yet we have this material existence, spirit, matter, whatever you want to call it. You're looking at a diagram of the devolution of consciousness to create the material world. We begin with pure consciousness and slowly add matter. This is a Western perspective, I should say. Instead of energy and consciousness, it adds matter. But you get the drift. It's pretty much the same. Each step down, the amount of matter or energy increases until we get to the end of the line, the material world as we know it, and it's nothing but pure matter almost, with very little spirit or consciousness component. Now, this diagram, this devolution concept, has several implications. Living in a sea of consciousness means that consciousness rules, and there are several corollaries that follow from this. The first one we can think about is energy follows thought. You've heard that many times before. And energy is subordinate to thought because thought is higher up on the ladder of consciousness. In other words, it's above. It has more consciousness component than it has a material component. The second thing is that mind over matter. Mind over matter is usually talked about with physical health and well-being and how our thinking can influence our health and well-being. And again, mind has power over our matter because it is higher up. It has a higher consciousness component than does matter. So you see, it's just this consciousness component that tells which has rule over what. And finally, there's this idea of that to spiritually evolve, to grow, we have to reduce our dependence or connection to the material world. And we have to become more spiritual. The more we are involved in the material world, the more we are caught up in it, and the more we become closer associated with it, and it becomes more difficult to raise our consciousness. This is one of the reasons all these yogis would spend time in the caves, practice detachment, things like that. You're looking at a diagram, the levels of consciousness that depicts the devolution of consciousness to create the material world. This is how I, as a dowser, earth healer, and geomancer, see this. So we begin at the top with consciousness, and that is, it begins with consciousness and slowly devolves, picking up more matter, less consciousness, as you saw in a previous diagram. Now, consciousness, this level is meant to raise your consciousness. This is what it's about. It's meant to nourish your soul, make you a more loving, caring person. And it has several components, the first of which is a field of consciousness. A field of consciousness is the highest form of consciousness that I have found. These fields of consciousness exist in America's Northeast and Southern Ontario, Canada. They are powerful. I wrote a book about these fields of consciousness, where to find them. They're called Sacred Sites in North Star Country. The second form of consciousness that I know of is the Ley Lines system. And the Ley Lines system comes out of fields of consciousness. And if you're looking at a diagram right now, you can see that ley lines originate from a field of consciousness. They pass over the field, they pick up on that consciousness, and then they go to the distant corners of the earth, all the while interacting with everything and everyone they come in contact with. Now, they are meant to carry that consciousness and raise our consciousness, make us more loving, caring, because what they carry is the highest aspiration for humankind by the Creator. However, they can be blemished, attacked, and they usually are, so they diminish over time. But anyway, this is probably one of the ways that you know of or you're in contact with on a regular basis is the system of ley lines. And the other form of spiritual nutrition that we get or consciousness is love or meditation or cosmic prana. That is energy, again, that goes around the surface of the earth, but this has a much higher consciousness component than energy component. We're immersed in it 24/7, and it is meant to raise our consciousness and make us better. Each time we do a loving, caring act, we pick up a little bit more, it nourishes our soul, and we become an even better person. During meditation, as you can see here, when you meditate, you pick up cosmic prana. This is one of the reasons you want to meditate. It is going to give you an extra dose of this meditation prana that is going to elevate your consciousness and make you a more caring, loving person. It is also going to help brush off some of the karmic baggage, the samskaras that have attached over your body over time. The second level that I'm talking about, or I have the level, is the collective or the group level. And this is involved with creating unity. You know, this is all it's about. At its core, this reinforces the unity and oneness. Now, what I'm talking about is that we are all, this sort of cosmology is based upon this cosmic, this idea that we're like part of one, all is God, all is this pantheistic perspective. Well, in our descent down into the material world, we become individuals. Now we have to get back up to that, and this level facilitates that sort of collective being. And you know some of these structures or apparatus, and we begin with Jung. Jung had his concept of archetypes, universal patterns of behavior and thinking that were housed in the collective unconscious, that if you read his Mind and Earth, is housed in the physical earth. Then there's Sheldrake's morphic resonance, basically another grouping, a collective grouping similar to the collective unconscious, and you have circles. This is my own cosmology. I think that circles define all of reality. I think we live in a sea of consciousness, and that it consists of circles and relationships that create the world as we know it. I detailed this, if you're interested in learning more, in my book, Everything Has Karma. I need to address this in a larger book, and I will do that at some point. There also is what I call, more simplistic and probably more stuff like this, what I call union energy. Union energy is the energy that forms whenever we get together with someone, or whenever we think or look at someone, or even look at our dog. So this again flows across the surface of the earth, and when we look at it, when we look at our dog or something, all of a sudden it's pulled towards both of us and it nourishes us. I think it raises our consciousness. I don't know how much. I don't think a lot, but it does. And it can be if you do it with a lot of people in a group, it can be quite powerful. Now the other thing, the final thing is that I talk about in this second level are the mental mind and thoughts or thought forms. Charles Ledbetter, who wrote the book Thought Forms, a theosophist, said that thoughts do three things. They attach to us, they attach to where we created them, and then they go out to do their work, whatever we thought was going to go out there and attempt to do it. And it's because of this third factor going out that I included in this collective area, because these thoughts are going to interact with and influence everything. As you'll see in the next level, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So they are sort of a collective in that they bring this collective about by interfering or working with other things. The third level that I have is the individual support. And this is just about individual people, that the forces and factors, that energies that maintain individual life, whether it be plant, animal, or human. Now, it is made up primarily of the life in the earth force. And the life force circulates across the surface of the earth. I've got YouTube videos on that. It goes into the ground and is recycled through the earth as the earth force, I should say. And it blankets, just as the life force blankets all the world, below the surface, all of life is nourished by the earth force. So these are the two primary forces that sustain all of life. There are other apparatus that affect emotions. And for example, I found several devices over the years. I wrote about one for the Light Bridges magazine back in, I guess, about 2007, 8, 9, something like that. And that Light Bridges used to be published out of the Buffalo area, New Age magazine. And I found this at, God, I can't think of that, the big spiritualist haven. I can't think of the name right now, in Western New York. But anyway, there are these sorts of things that can affect our mood and raise our mood, and I think that this is something that can affect people that are sensitive to the winter weather. I think it's called SAD, seasonal affective disorder, or something similar to that. This would be helpful to, if you had that, to meditate in that and to spend time in such an apparatus. But that's the way I see it. It's also important to note in this level can integrate with other levels and create something we call earth magic. So we have our thoughts in this, create this energy, and it can interact. This movement energy can be either improved or diminished or blocked, and it can be improved through the creation of energy vortices. So several things can come to earth and becomes a sort of earth magic. Energy vortices are created. At the same time, negative thinking can create blockages in this area. So there's this integration between these levels. These levels do certain things, but there's this integration that occurs between them. Now, the final phase, or the level, I should say, is matter. And matter just gives form and function. This is just about all energy and very little consciousness. There are things like what I call the cell or the unit or the room. And these are just basically invisible rooms, like think of a frame of a house with no walls. You've got the frame, the studs sticking up. That is kind of what I would visualize a room as, and they permeate the earth. They're about 10 feet high or so, 10, maybe 12, 15, I don't remember. And their width and length vary depending upon where they are. They're larger, closer to the equator, smaller towards the poles. Geomancers and dowsers have found what they call the Hartmann grid. These are lines of energy that intersect running east and west. I think what they're finding, they found the room, but they don't understand there's much to it, that it has walls, and within it contains apparatus. And finally, all this coalesces to create the material world, the physical being, the greater universe. Basically, I call this school. And all of this is school. And we have descended into the material world. It's now time to get back home and raise our consciousness and become the spiritual beings that we are. Several of you might see levels of consciousness very similar to planes of existence. The work of theosophists such as Charles Ledbetter or the great mystic Sri Aurobindo. And there's certainly merit to that, and I believe you have a strong point. However, I think there are differences. And the first thing is, I see these levels of consciousness as integrated, as interacting and influencing each other. And I noted that in how thought forms can come down and create energy vortices or blind springs in the earth. So there's this constant interaction. They can also create blockages. So I think that's a difference, and I think it's an important distinction. Second of all, I'm talking about elevating consciousness, and I think this kind of goes with this whole perspective that, we're here to grow and evolve. We're in school right now, and I see this as an effort to, raise your consciousness. And then finally, although I've experienced archetypes, I really felt the pull at times of thought forms, and we're all affected. We don't understand it, but I really felt it like, yet I don't see a plane of existence, nothing but energy. And I can talk about there's energy, there's a ton load of energies permeated, but I just don't see them as separate and distinct. So I don't see that. I respect that opinion. Please comment below and give me your opinion. Tell me what you think, and so we can get a discussion going. I'll try to respond if there's not too many responses. But anyway, this is what I think at this point. I'll have to revise this. I haven't really formalized this to this degree. So this has been a helpful exercise for me and learning and growing. Now, I'm going to include two videos, or try to include two videos, or first a playlist about ley lines and fields of consciousness. I encourage you to learn dowsing and learn how to learn about ley lines, because they are integral. If you want to make a better world, or you want to make a better you, ley lines can play an important part. We're really talking about how making space work for you, expanding your efforts. So ley lines can do that, and you can begin to create sacred space and begin to make a better world. I'm also going to include a video about the Peacemaker Sanctuary at Onondaga Lake. If you're within a 4 to 5 hour drive of Syracuse, I encourage you to come here. This is an incredible place. It's got a stacked 12 a field. That comes as high in a series of 3. That's it. And not only that, but there are numerous vortices there. And I can say they're energy vortices, but they're really vortices of consciousness, which is a unique form. In other words, a vortice of it goes out and then it comes back in. It goes out and it comes back in. It's always it's very unique. It's very. I talked about it in my Sacred Sites book, but it's just an incredible thing. Also in the vortices book, so you can experience that. You can also, there's a ton load of, there's 5, 6, 7 geospirals in the earth, which are incredibly therapeutic for your health and well-being. So you can just sit down on the ground if you can, if it's not too cold, and put your bare hand down, or a leg that might have just a little bit of cloth, because you want to connect in it. So those two things I think are significant. I ask that you please like and subscribe, and thank you for your time and consideration. Namaste!